Hello, good evening. Welcome to another night on 20 Minutes Live, where conversation would happen every night for 20 minutes at least on how to have our space develop, what we have to do as a nation to have our space improve is the conversation here. For whatever reason, I seems to have stopped that this conversation is not for boys, it's for men. These are the real conversations that real men should be having. And when I mean real men, I'm not talking about just gender. I will be talking about everything that has to do with adulthood and consciousness. That at some point in our lifetime, we should get to a certain point of consciousness. The consciousness will be interpreted by different book of studies in a way, but what it means basically, and what it would mean, is that we should get to the point where we start having and finding a concrete meaning for living. That the level of consciousness is finding a concrete meaning. It's not limited to that, but that also is acceptable. Finding concrete meaning for living will be also the term that can be used for consciousness. At the point where surviving is no longer enough, where we would aspire to begin to find concrete meaning beyond the surface, beyond what has been taught to us, beyond the triangular way of living. Work, study, work, sleep, work, start a family, and that will be the end. That a life should make more meaning than that. And it's not just for some persons, some individuals, that at the point where we truly find and we start that journey of finding concrete meaning for living, then we'll get to the point where everyone will get into their full potential actualization and their true potential, in life. And that is the point we should all aspire to, not some few persons, even though some few persons seems to have been able to successfully, scratch the surface of this other way, another aspect of living. But it's something designed for all humans, I would believe. So, and that would justify that it's at that point that we start talking about our brothers, about people who look like us. It's at that point we start this consciousness of inclusive and not exclusive. It's at that point we will start saying it's not just enough that I have it. What of my brothers? What of my sisters? Is that enough? That is that point that will get to the point of consciousness that will be asking, what would happen to Africa? What would happen to the world? What's happening to children in Gaza? What's happening to lives in Israel? What is happening to life in Congo? What is happening to life in Somalia? It's at that point would tie stronger meaning beyond self. Is at the point of consciousness. Stronger meaning beyond self. And there is no other strong meaning to have than to include lives into your cause, into whatever you want to do. And as such, I'm a student of Yoruba. Maybe I'm not but I'm learning to be a student of Yoruba, let me say that. And I love the fact that they would say, ilé là ń rò ká tó sọmọ lórúkọ, ilé la ti ń kó ẹ̀ṣọ́ ròde. That first one I said is that you would have to assess home before, or assess the antecedents before you start giving name to a newborn baby or to the future. That is what it will signify. And the other one would say that what beauty would have to start from home. There is no beauty built in the sky. Beauty must start from home. If we want to beautify the world, then we must have beautified ourselves and our homes. And our home in this case is Nigeria. Our home in this place for black people is Africa. And as a collective being responsible to keep the earth in shape, our home also will be extended to the world at large. So that's the conversation here. So it's not for boys, it's for men. This is where men becomes men. This is where boys would have to part way, and I am ready to have that conversation, for men. So back to the conversation. So this is where we talk about developing our space. One of the constant thing here is that developing our space is the interest. Every other subject being taught is for that purpose. It's not taught outside that purpose. Every other subject being discussed is for that purpose. It's for developing our space. That there will not be a subject discussed here that would not have a direct or indirect impact on our space. If it's not worthy, if we can't implement that, if we can't effect change within our space, that it's not worthy of my discussion. It shouldn't be worthy of our discussion, right? But that is the conversation here. That is the point, and that is the consciousness I am sustaining, and that will be the conversation on 20-minute live every night. And also, just to give our conversation some level of direction, some level of in quotes, some level of constructiveness or construction or building project, some level of architectural works, right? So that we can keep our thoughts focused on a point and to establish it, right? So we would give our week theme, and the theme for a week ago just ended yesterday, titled Religion. And this week we will talk about mental warfare. Mental warfare. And just like the custom is, today will just be an introduction to this this subject. Why mental warfare? Why mental warfare? Last week I was my personal, call it body of study, call it my personal research, call it my theme, my personal theme of studying would be finding a baseline for Nigerians. What should be the baseline? That was the question I was asking myself all through a week ago. Yes, that finding a baseline for us. I realized that it seems to be the more as our system and our space get chaotic, the more divisive or divided we become. And I felt like if we cannot unite on the things happening to us, then what else would bring us together? And if we cannot come together, we cannot start building. Unity, revolution will thrive on the basis of unity. Development would thrive on the basis of unity. So I was like, how come? What is the baseline? And I shared some of my view also last week while we were discussing religion, because that is also the failure of religion within our space, that even people who are religious would not have a common ground. Baseline means a common ground. Even people who are religious would not even have this common ground. You know, you will be quoting A, then the person will be quoting B from the same book and text of study. That is how chaotic it has become. You know, that ideas and ideology will not have a single baseline that all of us can agree on. And there's a religious book that says that if we can't agree, you know, then we can work together. Paraphrasing it. Can two work together except they agree? That is the text. So if we can't come to the point where we have a common ground and a common subject that brings us together, irrespective of our differences, of our sentiments, and of our, you know, choice, right? Because we would have preferences. If we cannot come together, if there is nothing that strong enough to bring us together, then we are truly doomed. So I was cracking my brain. I was doing research, you know, on this throughout a week ago, you know, about what could bring us together, what could actually bring us together, what should be our common ground. You know, some persons would argue that tribe will bring us together, that we should just go our separate ways, and then once we do that, we would have fixed we'll be able to fix our problem. That's a big fat lie. That's a big fat lie. Tribe will not bring us together. There are about 250 ethnic groups within this country, about different 500 languages being spoken. So tribe is just the mirage some persons want to create that suits their ideology. It's not. I can bet you within 6 months, within 6 months of secession group within our country, there will be another civil war. Just like what happened in Nigeria, that within the space of 7 years, there was a civil war. Because the British, the people who established us as a country, did not fix something. But it's our time to fix it. You know, that's another question. So there are several things this subject this week would fix. You know, it will fix the baseline. It will help us understand why there is no baseline in the first place, and for whose advantage is that, and then what therefore should begin to form our baseline, and what we can build around. That's mental warfare. You know, another word for it is just psychological warfare. What does it mean? It means that anything that really would affect the way we think, the way our senses work, would be that. And just before you think, oh, how is that relatable to us? Because we are experiencing, you know, there was a day I was telling someone that based on the data out there and the stats, that Nigeria has more numbers of people living in absolute poverty, in abject poverty, than any other country in the world, including India, that is of a population ×5 bigger than our population. And the person would say, no, I'm lying, that's not true. And the person would not even agree with it. And meanwhile, it was not my word. It was based on data that was submitted. But do we need data to confirm things within our space? If not, that something is beginning to be wrong somewhere. And it's here. It's in the mental. You know, do we need data to see what the reality of things is saying. Do we actually need data? So, and let me just peel it out of the bag. That for me, in the course of my research, I realized that there are two things. And one, I discovered it during my research, and the other, it just popped up this night, and which is valid also. One is that we should begin to make knowledge our baseline. And this will be difficult. And one of the reasons why it will be difficult is when we discuss mental warfare or the psychological warfare, that will have been deployed on us as a space. But we need to rally our collective groups to begin to use knowledge as our baseline. So what type of knowledge? What kind of knowledge? This is another question. But we need to use knowledge, especially knowledge driven by fact, not by emotions, not by beliefs, by fact of reality, by fact of stats that we can prove. We should be driven by knowledge. And then the second thing is that reality should speak to us. How we became this docile to our reality is confusing. It's confusing. How we became this negligent. How we developed the level of negligence we have right now to our reality, in accepting that we have problem to fix. That and one of the major problem I would say is that Japa is no longer migration. It's not people relocating. Let me say it the way Yoruba. It's not people. It's not relocation. Japa is a menace. It's like at what point do we think people committing suicide will be a form of transition? If truly there is a better space outside my space, outside this present time that I am in time, and then what therefore says that I cannot use suicide as a form of transiting to that better space than going through this full circle of hardship? If it is suicidal, we will term it as bad, right? But how come we have not seen Japa as also a suicidal action? It's suicidal. Is that we Japa no migration, that we are committing a suicide of nationality. And I'm not saying this to say that people should not commit that, because I can't prove, just like the same way someone committing suicide, I can't, honestly speaking, I will feel bad that someone is committing suicide, is suicidal, but I can't deny the reality why that person is committing suicide. And for me, helping would not just stop with the person. Helping the person not to commit suicide is just like you are just transferring the death note or the death time to another date. Is an eventuality that would happen. So for me, even the way I would react to it, it's not just the person. Reacting to the person and seeing the person will begin to give me the kind of disturbing idea that what happened about several people that have done this without a single camera to record them. And what happened to the people that are still growing up that will be subjected to this form? So we need to, is it when people become suicidal, becomes numb, that's when we realize that this is a problem, this is a menace, we have a menace to tackle? No. It shouldn't get to that point. It shouldn't even get to the point where people literally now commit suicide for us to begin to change things within our space. But how come we'll get there? How come things will still be known to us? How come people within my space will still be showcasing leverage poverty as wealth? And they think it's normal. How come? Mental warfare. So there is a war that must be won. But if we are not even conscious of it, we would not be able to win it. So, and that will be the discussion. So, we would highlight the point, some of the things we need to watch out, some of the things are already playing out within our space. One of them will be propaganda. It's done for a reason. Some of us say it's schools. No, propaganda achieves something. Demonization, just like we discussed in religion, is also a form of mental warfare. That you see yourself as the problem and you see every other person that looks like you as a problem is a form of mental warfare. So at the end of it, what are we going to achieve discussing this? One, we are going to achieve strong level of awareness to what we should be combating and to where the war is. The war is not physical. The war is mental. Secondly, we will begin to create baseline because we would understand ourselves more. We would understand where the foolishness we would display, where it's coming from, and we'll be able to enable or create some level of tolerance to those level of foolishness, right? And then the third is that it will birth unity. It will create more unity amongst ourselves. So that is what the conversation will be this week. That they need to get awakened to mental warfare, to the fact that some things are still supposed to be battled with, right? So that we can really have our mental, like the religious will say, deliverance. The mental deliverance can take place, and then we can begin to act accordingly. Act accordingly. And then also that the unity will start bringing about the consciousness to have our space develop. There is a slight level of consciousness about people trying to create individualistic solutions and thinking that is permanent. No, that is temporary at every form and every point of view. But there is a slight lies. It's not even people lying to themselves directly. It's just the psychology. That's why people have to go to therapists, actually. That's why me personally, I believe that we have to go to therapists. But listening to Mapungo this today, actually, I felt like maybe not the actual foreign therapists or the English way of therapists. Maybe we have to create our own. But Africans would have gone through a whole lot and will need a therapy. And that is what this week also would appeal to, because therapy is about fixing what is wrong mentally. And it does not mean that that the only people who need to fix their mental status, or something in their mental mind or in their minds are just the mad people. No, that's not what it means. It means that when we are no longer in control of our actions, that means at the point where we are no longer in control of actions, where we no longer understand what we do and the reason why we do it, then we need therapy at that point. But like I said, maybe not the way we should see therapy, not the formal way of or the English way of what therapy is. maybe an African way, I will still think about it anyway. But that will be the conversation this week. It's going to be an interesting one, educating and very truthful. It's going to be brutal also. And I think that's why I would agree that what Africa needs is not the actual therapeutic methods that the white have created. I've had some trainings anyway. But I don't think that's it, because those ones are not brutal. Those ones are just accommodating, just to absorb the. So it's going to be brutal. It's going to be brutal. And at the end of the day, we are going to get better, because once our mind is functioning adequately, our productivity will increase. The reason Africa is like this, argue it tomorrow, is because Africa or Africans do not know the know-how to make it better. That's it. That's the absolute truth. That's one of the truths and one of the facts about it. If we know better, we will do better. That's it. So let's round up this night session for tomorrow, so that we can give way. We can give way for tomorrow. But just before we go, I pledge to Nigeria, my country, to be faithful, loyal, and honest, to serve Nigeria with all my strength, to defend our unity and uphold our honor and glory. So help me, my ancestor. See you tomorrow night.